And then you say, wait, isn't there an underlying cause? Isn't it lipids or genetics or something else? And you chase it back to the science lab and you say, I need to tell my patients why. Why, when they come in at age 34 with a brand new heart attack and their doctor has always told them their cholesterol was good, it's fine, nothing to do. Why did this happen? And so I started asking these questions around genetics and lifestyle and how these two things interact. Once we can identify the genetic target that we want to inhibit or block, or augment in some cases, then we can go after it specifically and we can learn. So if South Asians, for instance, there's probably two major things that we think we may learn. One is that
what if you could reclaim hours of free time each week, create legacy building wealth, and devote more energy to your passion projects without giving up on your career as a life-saving MD? Dr. Vikram Raya is a functional cardiologist, high-performance coach, and real estate expert, is here to give you the tools, strategies, and solutions you need to transform your life, unlock your limitless potential, and achieve greatness, all while freeing up your precious time. Welcome to Limitless MD. Let's dive in.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Limitless MD. I'm your host, Vikram Raya. Today, we have a super special episode. I have one of the top Harvard-trained cardiologists, Dr. Romit Bhattacharya, and he's going to talk to us about South Asians and heart disease. And I know many of you guys who are listening either are South Asian or have friends or family members who are South Asian. And so this is near and dear to my heart. I don't know if you guys remember this, but I've told the story about how my father collapsed in front of me with a heart event. I've had 6 people in my family die of heart attacks. And so it was one of the inspirations for me to become a cardiologist. So I really want to thank Dr. Romit for coming on our show and talking about his latest cutting edge research that's Harvard funded, that will probably get some NIH funds as well. And he wants to change the landscape for South Asians and help them, because look, here's the statistics that we were just talking about in the green room. South Asians are 4 times more likely to have heart attacks and 6 times more likely to have diabetes at a younger age with less symptoms, right? So we're walking time bombs and we don't even know what's going on. So Romit, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you so much, Vic. Really, really excited to be here and really excited for you to invite me to share this message.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, you're a smart guy, you're a cardiologist, you've trained at one of the arguably the best institution on earth at Harvard. What made you get into this? This seems complicated. This seems complex. Like you should be driving around in a nice fancy car and doing your cardiac catheterizations, or you're doing your echoes and just living life. But you're devoting your life to something really powerful here, buddy.
Thanks so much, Vic. Yeah, this question of lifestyle and genetics contributing to cardiovascular disease is really the central question that I've been asking for a very long time. Like many of us, I started out with that adrenaline rush of, let's get into the cath lab, let's get into the cardiac ICU. That's where we save lives. And when you start chasing the disease of coronary artery disease, the number one killer in the world, when you chase it from the ICU to the cath lab, and then you say, wait, couldn't have this been stopped before? And then you chase it to the clinic. And then you say, wait, isn't there an underlying cause? Isn't it lipids or genetics or something else? And you chase it back to the science lab. And you say, I need to tell my patients why. Why, when they come in at age 34 with a brand new heart attack and their doctor has always told them their cholesterol was good, it's fine, nothing to do. Why did this happen? And so I started asking these questions around genetics and lifestyle and how these two things interact. And lo and behold, where it led me was my own backyard. All of these stories in our community where we see people who've died too early with sudden heart attacks with no real warning signs. And now, really the story, and we'll talk a little bit more about INTER-HEART and the epidemiology around this stuff, but the story has really been that the reason this is happening is that South Asians are lazy, they don't exercise, and they're gluttonous and they eat too much. And that's it. And that's where the story ended. And I think that really needed to be overturned and investigated further.
Yeah, lazy, gluttonous, I can accuse some of my relatives of that. But that being said, we've been told we're skinny fat. We've been told, South Asians or Indians or Pakistanis, we have small coronary vessels. We've been told all these things. Some are facts, some are fiction. I'd love for you to sort of tease out all of this. And then I know you're you're standing on some shoulders of some giants, because other research has been done in this area. We've talked about the MASALA study, some other studies. You said INTER-HEART you're going to talk about. Let's talk about some of the previous research that you're going to build upon with your study, which is called the OurHealth Study.
Yeah.
And let's talk about some of these misnomers of South Asians.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. So yes, so the OurHealth Study is a first of its kind study that's entirely remotely recruiting. So anybody in the United States who is of South Asian origin, above the age of 18 years of age, speaks enough English to be able to fill out surveys confidently about their health, and has a mailing address in the United States, they can participate in this study. They do not have to be in Boston. They do not have to come to Harvard. They can do it all from their computer or their phone, where they fill out some surveys, and we mail you a saliva collection kit. And then you mail it back, and we're able to join your survey data along with your genetic sequencing data and upcoming electronic health record data, which will also be linked. So it's a first of its kind study, but you're right. The reason why we're going forward with this is because of the major studies that have taught us a lot about cardiovascular disease and cardiometabolic disease in South Asians that already existed. The story starts many, many years ago, but I'll say that the modern version of the story starts with the INTER-HEART study, which was a giant study of about 30,000 individuals across 52 different countries, and many of which were in South Asia. And they said, hey, listen, all these traditional cardiovascular risk factors, the ones that we identified in Framingham Heart Study and things like that, like being overweight, not exercising enough, having a bad diet, smoking, are they equally potent across the globe? That was the question they were asking. And so what they found was they looked at the traditional cardiovascular risk factors in different peoples across the globe. And for our purposes, in South Asia, what they found was that South Asians, they didn't exercise as much as other ethnicities. They curiously ate fewer fresh fruits and vegetables, even though there's a lot of vegetarianism on the subcontinent. They had very low rates of smoking. That was good. And they also had lower LDL cholesterol, that bad cholesterol, but they had a higher ApoB cholesterol. And this is a cholesterol that encompasses both LDL, triglycerides, and some other lipid fragments. And so what they said was, hey, listen, they also had high rates of diabetes. So they said, hey, listen, there's nothing to see here. South Asians are not exercising, they're eating badly, and concomitantly, they have bad cholesterol and they have high rates of diabetes. That's why they're getting cardiovascular disease at higher rates. But after that time, curious things started happening. The South Asian pattern of emigration was broad. And so South Asians had been living in South Africa, in Kenya, in Australia, in Fiji, in the UK, in Canada, in the US for many years at that point. And many of them had already assimilated. They were eating Western type foods. They were going to yoga classes. They were, they were cycling on their Pelotons, just like everybody else. And yet, consistently across all these places, what they found was that the South Asians were still developing heart attacks and diabetes at higher rates faster than others, at younger ages, and with fewer comorbidities, at a weight that would be considered a healthy weight for other ethnicities. And so the question began. It was, gosh, is it really just that they're lazy and that they eat too much? And this is where studies like the MASALA study really came into play. The MASALA study, led by Ulka Kanaya out of UCSF and Northwestern, it stands for the Mediators of Atherosclerosis in South Asians living in America. It's an epidemiological study that it houses itself inside of the MESA cohort, which is the multi-ethnic study of atherosclerosis in the United States. And so the advantage of it is that they can look at the proportion of people who develop disease and compare it across different races: South Asian, Chinese American, Black American, Hispanic American, White American. And what they have discovered is a whole host of things. But one of the big things is that South Asians develop visceral adiposity, the fat tissue that kind of sits around your abdomen and your organs at a higher rate than others. That fat tissue also is infiltrating their muscles, other places in their body where it shouldn't be. They develop worse cholesterol patterns. They develop diabetes at faster rates, and they develop cardiovascular disease at faster rates with fewer other risk factors. So really then the question is, why are we developing these things at higher rates and faster than other ethnicities? And that's when sort of the modern era of genomics comes into play. So I can pause there if you have questions, but I'd love to go on to genomics as well.
So it sounds like initially this was written off as lifestyle, and then some of the initial studies like the INTER-HEART said, okay, yeah, they don't train, their ApoBs are high, they're getting diabetes because they eat less vegetables, they don't move. But the interesting thing was when Indians have traveled all over the world and become their own diaspora, they become their own controls, right? So now Indians that are active should technically have different phenotypes or different expressions of disease than the ones back in home in India, on the subcontinent. But the interesting thing, what you're saying is the outcomes are quite similar despite the different lifestyles.
Exactly.
And that blows my mind, because I always thought, hey, we're healthier, we're in the US, or we're healthier, we're in Canada, or wherever we are. But that's interesting.
Well, this is a study that came out of our group, led by Anirudh Patel, looked in the UK Biobank. This is 500,000 Britishers, and of them, a fraction were South Asian. And they said, hey, listen, we already know that the UK Biobank, people who volunteer to be studied this way tend to be healthier. They tend to be more educated, they tend to be exercising more, they tend to be eating well. And so this is a pretty healthy cohort just from baseline. But when you look at South Asians and white British ancestry individuals in that cohort, even when you adjust for every other, so first of all, if you just calculate their risk of having a cardiovascular disease over the next 10 years, there's a score and an algorithm that cardiologists use to do this. If you calculate their risk of having cardiovascular disease over the next 10 years, it's essentially indistinguishable between the two groups. And even if you add in every known traditional risk factor, even then, we can't explain the fact that South Asians have 2 times the rate, in that very healthy cohort, twice the rate of heart attacks compared to their British counterparts. And this type of observation, we could go through lots of studies, but this type of observation has been repeated again and again and again in the epidemiology.
Okay.
But what we aren't answering is the question, okay, well, why is that happening?
Exactly. So now there's enough, I guess, original data out there that's showing that this pattern is occurring over and over across different studies, across different countries even. Mm-hmm. So now your study, the OurHealth Study, is recruiting how many patients now all over the country?
Yeah. So this is the hope is that we're going to be an ongoing cohort. We already have about 1,000 patients recruited, and we've been around for only about 8 months. So this is one of the fastest recruiting genetic cohorts, if not the fastest to my knowledge, a genetic cohort of South Asians in the world. But we're not yet the largest. What we would love to do is we would love to have a cohort of tens of thousands strong.
Okay.
If we can reach somewhere between 10 and 50,000, that would make us one of the largest in the world. And it would also give us extraordinary statistical power to make inferences about the variants that we discover.
Okay. Let's say you find a genetic marker, or you find certain things. Like, let's talk about, like, fast forward at the end of the study. OurHealth Study got published, let's call it in 2024, 2034, you end up publishing this phenomenal study all over the New England Journal. Congratulations. Good job.
Thank you.
You got a promotion. Now what? What are you going to do with this data?
So this is critical, right? So we have already entered a new age of biomedicine, where genetically targeted therapies work at a multi-fold higher rate than non-genetically targeted therapies. And just to take a brief aside into history, right? Initially, humans found that, oh, this plant seems to help me. I'm going to chew on this plant, and that makes me better. Then we entered the era of chemistry, where we could isolate, oh, I think it's this compound in the plant. Let's isolate that compound. Then we got into synthetic chemistry, where we said, oh, if I just add this amine group on the end, it lasts longer with fewer side effects. Great. And that's where we were for a long time. And then we began to say, wow, I understand the immune system now. And it's actually this receptor that I need to block. That dirty drug, that synthetic compound, it had lots of side effects other places. But now I can biologically synthesize an antibody to block that receptor. Amazing, right? Now we're in the lock and key model. And now we've taken that even further to the small interfering RNA model, to the CRISPR model, where genetics is king here, right? When we know the target, we can design a small interfering RNA to shut down the production of that protein altogether. We can take a CRISPR target, and we're seeing this in sickle cell. We can alter the protein, right?
You're talking about gene editing, Romit.
Yeah, so I'm not saying that we need to do everything gene editing, But what I am saying is that once we can identify the genetic target that we want to inhibit or block or augment in some cases, then we can go after it specifically and we can learn. So if South Asians, for instance, there's probably two major things that we think we may learn. One is that there's going to be not one or two variants, but really a combination of millions of variants that make us an increased or decreased statistical likelihood to go down a certain path of disease. Now, if we could identify that, of course, we're not going to target millions of variants in one person, but we can tell them, hey, listen, your greatest risk is through the lipid pathway. We need to, from a very early age, shut down that lipid pathway. We need to block or control that lipid pathway. Or the next person, we may say, you know what, yours is through the abdominal adiposity pathway. We really need to pay attention to this. And maybe something like GLPs are going to be really important for that patient who's at high genetic risk for diabetes. Many family members have developed diabetes in their 20s or 30s, and they're already developing that visceral adiposity. Now we can say we can target already existing therapies using that type of method, or we could identify novel variants. Now, South Asians are not just a people. South Asia, that's not a people. It's made up of hundreds of smaller subgroups that are broken up by geography, religion, language, caste, whole bunch of different things. And they're small groups that intramarry for many, many generations. What that does is it enhances the rate of rare variants, which is a bad thing in some cases, but for a statistician and a geneticist, it's actually a great thing because it allows us to identify rare variants that may be very powerful. And for instance, the big hope there is that you identify variants that can be then targeted and improve the health of not just South Asians, but everybody on the planet. And right now, for instance, the ApoC3 inhibitors that are being, they're blowing up in the pharma world right now, they were that variant, that beneficial variant that's now being used to develop drugs, that was validated by our PI, Pradeep Natarajan, and others, of course, is all team science, but in a small consanguineous group of Pakistani individuals. And
okay,
that's
so let me
discovery.
Yeah, let me pause you there because there's so much to digest there. So what you're telling me is you're taking this, from the bench, from the translational science to the real clinic and to the patients. And so you'll be able to use patterns, right? Everything is about pattern recognition, pattern utilization, and now pattern creation, right? Once we recognize the patterns and start utilizing these patterns, potentially medications and gene strategies or even pharmacotherapies. You're saying even lifestyle, we can say, hey, look, you have a propensity for this. Hey, I recommend this type of diet, exercise, nutritional plan. And so between the lifestyle interventions early in their 20s, perhaps teens, 20s, 30s, you're going to throw in the pharmacotherapy and the targeted therapy, like you said, with the CRISPR. I mean, we can essentially protect and bulletproof South Asians from heart disease so they can live in their 90s, 100s, 120s, and essentially have a sort of a renaissance for lifespan.
You're exactly right in that, not everything is about the drug you take. Much of it is about the lifestyle that you live. But wouldn't it be great if we could tell people in advance, hey, listen, this is the way that your body is functioning. We need to think about ways that we target your interventions because prevention is king. I'm a preventive cardiologist, right? So if we can prevent the disease, that's what we want. We don't want to wait till the onset and give you a drug. But, the landmark study, 2016, many studies like this have come out since 2016 in the New England Journal by our other co-PI, Amit Khera, and Sekar Katharesan, who's one of our advisors. Amit showed that even if you are so let's say you take people and you bin them into low, intermediate, or high risk of coronary artery disease using 6.6 million variants across their genome, right? You bin them into low, medium, or high risk for coronary disease. And then you again subdivide them into people who have a poor lifestyle, an intermediate lifestyle, or a healthy lifestyle. The dramatic part of this finding was that the people at the highest genetic risk benefited the most from living a healthy lifestyle, and they could actually lower their risk down to equivalent with people at the lowest genetic risk with an intermediate or poor lifestyle. So, if you happen to win the genetic lottery and you're at a very low risk for heart disease and you're very, very low risk for diabetes, then great. Yeah, you can probably have lots of cheeseburgers and smoke a cigarette and nothing's going to happen to you, at least not from cardiovascular disease. But if you're at high genetic risk, which many South Asians appear to be, then the message here is that lifestyle becomes even more important. But wouldn't it be great if we could guide people, and if they fall short, that we have therapies available for them?
I think this is this is the next level of medicine. This is intelligent, sophisticated, personalized, precision-based medicine that is not like, oh, everyone exercise, lose weight kind of thing. This is more like, hey, look, you're South Asian from South India. You've grown up in the Bay Area. Looks like based on your genetic profile, you're more propensity for visceral adiposity. You're probably going to develop prediabetes and diabetes in your 40s. And I recommend these 3 pharmacotherapies, this type of physique, lifestyle, and this type of nutritional program. And we should check periodically for this. And maybe we'll do CT angios. Maybe we'll check oxidized LDL. We'll do more advanced therapies than your traditional doctor recommends. And we'll identify early if we need to. Otherwise, we'll prevent. Is that sort of what... Is that a future kind of prognostication on a person?
That's absolutely a way that it could go. Additionally, those who participate in the OurHealth study and share their genomic information, that is contributing to potentially that future, and also potentially contributing to developing therapeutics that are designed for South Asians. We don't even know how many South Asians take part in clinical trials because they're lumped into a group called Asian Other, but we suspect from inferences that it's probably less than 1%. So when my mom comes to me and says, hey, I can't take those meds, I can't tolerate that dose. I used to say, Mom, that's not a thing. I've looked at the studies that all these doses were really well tolerated. And now I'm thinking to myself, but she wasn't included. Yeah. We didn't include any South Asians in so many of these trials. So shouldn't we include them and then see what the correct dosing strategy is?
Yeah. So Romit, I've been rocking Asian Pacific Islander for many years, man. I don't know about you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm Asian Other. I'm Asian Other.
All right, cool. Okay, this is amazing, man. I can see the long-term impact. So how can we help? How can people learn about your study? How can they potentially enroll? How can other doctors, there's some of the top doctors in the country listen to this podcast. How can they reach out and be involved?
Yeah. So number 1 is word of mouth, right? Tell your friends, family, WhatsApp groups, aunties, everybody, right? That OurHealth study is out there, that it's our responsibility to take part and take care of our own community. This project should only go as far as our community believes it's important to be. So, it's not 5 other people's responsibility to join. It's our responsibility to join. And so that's the first thing is join yourself, tell your friends, family, share it on your WhatsApp groups, on your socials, all that kind of thing. If you're interested in having us come and talk to your group, we can definitely do that. Secondly, for those of you who are physicians and you're seeing patients and you're in clinic to talk to your patients about it, we can mail you material for your clinic rooms. You can hand them out to patients, all of that kind of thing. Contact us at OurHealthStudy@mgb.org, or just find us at www.ourhealthstudy.org.
And all of that will be in the show notes, guys.
Yeah. And the last thing is really we're still a fledgling study that's fully philanthropically supported right now. We're applying for NIH funds, NHGRI funds, and a whole bunch of other things. Once we have the cohort built, to apply to do the science with grant funding is absolutely part of the roadmap. But nobody else is going to pay to build this cohort of South Asians. I think that part is up to us. So we are still fundraising. So we need about another $2 million to complete this level of build. And we are looking for sponsors and people to try and help us build this up. And that's really for the community. It's it's fully philanthropic. So that's the other ask.
Awesome. And where's that information if they wanted to donate?
Yeah, so absolutely, you can find us at www.ourhealthstudy.org. There's a link at the bottom for donate, or you can just contact us directly and we can set it up.
All right. Thank you, Romit. This is amazing. Thank you for the mission you're on. Thank you for helping us as a whole population. Appreciate it. It's very meaningful. And I'll leave the listeners with this story. So, I would say about a month ago, I remember getting a phone call, and sort of a dear friend of ours, he had gone to the Trader Joe's, or the equivalent of, like a grocery store in our area. And he's 45, and his wife was concerned because he didn't come back. And then apparently he was found by the police with a car on. He hadn't got out of the car, but he apparently just passed away instantly in the grocery store parking lot, age 45, 2 young kids. And yeah, he was a little quote unquote healthy, if you could call it that, but no one had told him anything prior to him, any risk factors. He didn't have diabetes. He didn't have hypertension. He didn't have a cholesterol. He passed away. So, we're trying to prevent stories like that from happening. And so I think Romit's research is going to really, make a profound impact. And if we can go upstream, like he's talking about, that's going to be huge for our population.
Yeah,
so thank you.
Way too common. It's way too common. Thank you so much, Vic. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. All right, guys, until next time, be phenomenal.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Limitless MD. If you found value from this episode, I encourage you to share this episode with a friend and let me know by leaving a review. For more information, make sure you check out the links in the show notes below or simply visit vikramraya.com. Until next time, be phenomenal.